Hey everyone, good evening and welcome to the musicless version of um, On Location, Getting Back to Zero. My name is Jeff and I'm with you this Tuesday evening, still out in California for a little bit longer. So on remote and glad to be kind of getting back to the routine a little bit, which is nice. It's been a rough couple of weeks, but we've had some celebrations. I had my own, which I hit two years. The third a week ago, but one of my sober sisters is here, just celebrated a couple days later, her first year. So we're going to have Charissa here and wanted to talk tonight. I know we're going to kind of just shoot from the hip, but we always talk about alcohol abuse or misuse as being a progressive disease, progressive situation, whatever words you want to use for it, but being progressive. And I lived that, so I do fully believe it. There's some talk whether gray area drinkers are an end spot or something where someone can maintain, or if that's just a progression to the next level of alcohol misuse. I think that's an individual. I don't think I'm going to put a definition on that. I think that's up to the individual and what that is. I don't like to put labels on people. I think we need to maybe label ourselves. But we wanted to talk about not only the negative progression, but the positive progression of sobriety. I just hit 2 years, but I know after 1 year versus 2 years, sobriety is a little different for me because it's constantly it's a growth. There's a lot of learning, I think evolution or evolving is probably the best way that for me, I'm still learning who I am, and I think other people are learning who I am as well. The new Jeff is different than what I was for all those years. So I'm just curious how that's going. We got some varied levels, but I did want to bring in first. I'll bring in Kate, who I always love. Kate, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Jeff. Good to
How's
be here.
everything going? I didn't get my gift card from you for my 2 year
I'm
sober version.
sorry.
That's
I
still
I
mail's a little slow.
must have sent it to the wrong email.
Let's do some. Let's get some tracking numbers after the show over, so we can
Sure.
get that handled.
Look at the receipt.
But I do want, and thank you so much for being here. But I do want to bring in the person of the hour. Charissa is here celebrating 1 year. What, yesterday or the day before?
Sunday.
Sunday. That was you just said that without moving
Yeah.
your lips. That was pretty good. But actually, I think you were just frozen. But that's fantastic. So let's just start things rolling. And maybe I'll start with Kate. I'll throw this to you, and then we'll just roll back and forth. But I started sobriety to quit drinking. So after a week, I had reached where I was. I was no longer drinking. So that's what sobriety meant. Well, we all know that that's not the case, and it's a whole road from there. Um, where I was at 1 year and where I am at 2 years are completely different. But I'm just curious, Kate, what because you have a few years more of sobriety. Where has and we've actually got our fourth year in there. Megan, you're late. I'm trying to run a professional show here.
Sorry,
And, a little more
back-to-back meetings,
a little more courtesy on your part, a little more professionalism would be nice. But so Megan, you're at 4 years. Teresa just hit one. I'm at two. But Kate, back to you. Describe, I think we all know the negative progression. Describe the positive progression of sobriety for you. And let's just start with that.
Sure. Well, first of all, I had to stay away from a drink, and what that meant was really not being around drinking affairs. For me, I had to do that. I had to be supported by doing things that didn't involve alcohol unless I needed to, like a wedding. And then I got support before and after. So I did a lot of work to make sure that I kept myself safe, sober, and surrounded and supported in that.
Kate, did you do a program or were you just on your own?
Oh, I did AA. I've been
Okay.
in AA for these years. in now TLC. But the progression, you know, it took a while. I had this friend who was 31 years, and I'd be 5 years sober, and she'd say, "Oh, you're just a baby." I used to get so upset, you know, because she's comparing it to that. But I mean, there are things that you go through, like I feel like emotionally, I feel like as being more honest with myself and my life, that gradually opened up. It was like the third step in turning your life and your will over to a power greater than yourself, right? Really, just for me, that's just like taking the best next action, which is most aligned with the divine in my soul. And so, but I knew it's like I feel like we are presented and given things to work on when we're ready to work on them. Like I feel like the universe doesn't throw everything at us, so like we just progress one foot after the other, taking things in. They're usually not bigger than we are, and it's just like building our skills, building our base, all those things that help us to stay strong, and then taking on things as they come along. And sometimes there's things that I didn't do well at that were bigger than me, and those can be harder times. But that's how I feel like the things are done, and I see how you're saying in progression. I just feel like, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, I'll turn that off in a minute. So that's how I feel like we grow, and then we have more opportunities, and I feel like as I grew more and having abilities to deal with things emotionally and having those tools that I would gradually build, that I was better able to handle things and get myself back to center a little bit more quickly than I would have, that I do. In other words, the time to get back, as an old timer says, back on the beam, right, is a little bit shorter. Like it used to be a long time. I'd get unbalanced or what have you, and I might be out there for a while until I felt like I was balanced again. And so that has shortened, I would say.
Tris, I'm going to ask you this question, but I'm going to ask it to Megan first. I'm going to ask you what you throttled back your first year that maybe you wanted to. Did you find anything you needed to? What would you have throttled? Or, what's different of going into year 2 versus year 1? But before, hey, Rosemary, welcome. Good to see you. But before I do that, Megan, you just hit 4 years.
Yep.
What?
4.5, if you want to really be like.
Look, show up on time, and then we'll worry about that. What did you see as your progression? Did you see a progression, or was everything after year 1? Are you still growing? Are you trying to control it, or just getting the gifts as they arrive?
It's a little bit of everything there, Jeff. I'm definitely still growing, and I do feel that this has been a gift to me, and one that took me a long time to receive. I see a lot of myself when newcomers come into the program that I can maybe help a little. I can extend my hand and say, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I may be at 4 years, but I'm a baby, like Kate just said. I get a little nervous around the anniversaries, and especially the 5th anniversary coming up, where I've heard, just stories of people who think they've got it at 5 years. I don't know what's so magical about the 5 years, but for some reason I've heard multiple stories where people say, yeah, I think I got this now. I don't need any help anymore. I'm never going to be, I don't want that to happen. So, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because it seems to be working. And, I'm really grateful. And yeah, the growth happens every day. And sometimes I just see it in just the smallest things. that I appreciate things more, and I'm more cognizant of just, somebody letting me go in front of them at the grocery store, something so simple that just, I don't know if I appreciated that as much before. Maybe I did. I just, I'm just so grateful for every little thing. And it took me a long time to realize that, to reach for things that you can't have, or you think you should have, when I have everything I need right now.
So the question is, should we be trying to tackle the world in year one,
No.
or should we just focus on whatever? So I'll come back to that. But Charissa, again, we're almost the same date, which is so cool. If you had just started a little earlier or had called me, I would have waited a couple of days and drank more for a couple more days so we could have done this together, at least on the start date. But looking back, did you prioritize in your sobriety and not focus on certain things? I mean, maybe that's conscious, not conscious. How do you see that? I want to know what you did right, what you did wrong, how you would have changed it. Would you have accelerated any of that? So
Well,
hit it.
I definitely in the first 90 days focused 100% on just taking care of myself, because my body was healing, my brain was healing, my emotions were healing. It was a roller coaster, and I couldn't really predict how I was going to feel from one day to the next. And so, and that's actually, the science backs that up, because within usually around 90 days, our brain chemistry actually levels out, because when we flood it with alcohol, we get that depressant, and then our brain counteracts that by flooding it with cortisol. So it's trying to get it back to homeostasis. And it takes about 90 days for our brains to level out. So I was really, really careful with myself in those days. I was very protective of myself. I've been alone pretty much for the last 2 years. And I think maybe that was what I needed. I didn't have people in my life who were constantly, who could mess with that, so I was pretty lucky that way. I don't really think, as far as like the year, I consciously said, oh, I can't do that till I have a year type of thing. But I mean, I've been at this thing for a while, right? It's not like I just came in last February and like, I'm getting sober and just boom, I've got a year. Like, I've been working on this for 5 years. And that has involved developing a daily meditation practice. Last year, when I first got sober, I returned to my yoga practice. I've done IOP twice. I've been to rehab. I've done therapy. I've done EMDR. I did Annie Grace's The Path. I've been an active member of TLC. I've shared. I've reached out to people. I mean, Kate was one of the main people when I was in those 90 days that I'll call and just cry on her shoulder, and so I don't know. I mean, I'm cautious about putting a label on stuff, right? Because I can't look at Megan and go, I'm going to be like Megan, grateful that the guy let me cut in front of him at the grocery store at 4 years. I don't know. I mean, I think that's beautiful.
That's evident, Teresa, that's evident by the thing behind you on the window. It just looks like that little. I thought that was someone giving the bird that little red thing.
I saw that and I was like, I'm going to leave that there and see if someone notices it.
So are there things in your first? No, are there things in your first year that you feel you didn't achieve? Do you look back and are you like, this is great, but I wish I had, or I was hoping to have had? And I think maybe that's a mistake if we can just say we're sober.
I don't think it's just sober though. Like, this has been, the sobriety piece it's just a little tiny piece of a bigger picture, which was that I was spiritually bankrupt. And I was a hurting person, and I didn't know what to do with my hurt other than drown it. And now I feel like the sobriety has just integrated itself to the point to where I wouldn't give this up for anybody or anything. And I couldn't say that a couple years ago. You know, there was always that little question in the back of my head, right? And even coming up to a year, I was really nervous because I just wanted this so much. And I love my life now. Like, I fucking love it.
Mm.
And I don't want anything to get in the way of that. And I'm like a mama bear, like, you know, with my sobriety, you know, but that doesn't mean after 90 days, I went out in the world and I've lived my life and I live like anybody else. But I had to have a foundation underneath me before I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's someone that comes into sobriety that I've lost, you know, my job, my career, my family, my, you know, everything that's collapsed. Well, and you know, because of alcohol. And if you said, well, let's just worry about the alcohol for the first year. Well, no, you didn't hear me. I've lost everything. I want it all back. And so all I'm going to get out of this. So all the crap is still going to be the same, but now I'm just not going to have the one thing that made the crap go away is kind of a depressing thought. So I'll open it up. How do you respond to someone that's in that boat when you want to say you can't get the world in the first year?
Well, I think you figure out what's it's easier to figure out why all that crap, as you said, is in your life when you're more level-headed, more clear-headed, and you're not so consumed with putting the fire out with alcohol. You know, I think you just see things in a different light, and what the priorities, they just fall into place a little bit better, I think.
My problem is that after 2 weeks, I started to think, okay, I've never gone 2 weeks in my life without drinking. Obviously, I got this thing. And at 2 weeks, you know.
I thought the same thing, but I didn't think that I had it. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, I've gone 2 weeks. You know, that was.
I think I honestly was believing, okay, what's next? Mm-hmm. I got that. If I've gone 2 weeks, I can do that. So what's next? And then my risk looking back is, now you've only put a couple of drops of fuel into the tank. You got to fill that thing up before you hit the road.
I think too, you have to be careful of the ego. You know, it's like, we do the work, but we also receive grace. I don't think it's all of us, you know. I think that I believe that there's a higher power. I believe that I've been given grace a lot. I don't take credit for it. You know, like I take credit for the work that I do, but I don't take total credit for all of the results, because for me, that feels like a lot of ego. It kind of keeps the mystery in there. You know, you do the work, you do what it takes, like Chris is talking about, you know, bringing yoga back into her life and bringing spirituality and all of that. Well, there's beautiful mystery in all of this too, you know. But I think it's really, really dangerous to get cocky about it. Like, once you think, like you said, Jeff, I got this, and like, look at me, and I'm a badass and all these things. I just, for myself, I have to caution myself against that. I think healthy esteem and caution is, for me, really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
I just know that, I'm one of those that's in a rush when I've screwed everything up. You know, I want one apology and I want everything to be fixed. And I just, you know, myself, I'm one of those guys, I'll get frustrated very quickly with, you know, I want to get in shape. Okay, well, it'll take you 3 years no, I don't want to do that. Give me the damn pill that turns me into, you know, Schwarzenegger overnight. That's what I want. And anything more than that is too much work. But I think that's also with my recovery or my program. The rewards outweigh if there is any frustration with having to wait. It's like, wow, it's like Christmas morning. Yeah, it sucked. I wanted to open up my gifts back in October, but it's what an awesome morning to finally open those gifts. It made it all worth the wait.
The way I look at this recovery journey is a journey back to myself. There's a lot of, I don't know if you guys know who Gabor Mate is, but he talks about addiction, and any kind of addiction, not just substances, being a result of us losing authenticity within ourselves. And that's what I needed in order to, get to this point in my life, is to reconnect with me, fall in love with me, and just be me. And some of that has been like making a commitment to always telling the truth, making a commitment to speak up whenever I don't like the way something is being said to me or how it's presented to me, or some sort, I get to not dictate, but I get to show up the way I want to in the world. And I get to teach people how to treat me. And that has been a coming back to myself, because before I was like, love me, love me, love me. Here's what I'm going to do for you. Let me throw you this big birthday party. Let me buy you all these gifts. Let me do all these things for you, and love me, love me, love me. And not loving myself, it was easy to get distracted with, well, this person isn't doing things the way that I want. Right. So, I mean, even though it's been a year of continuous sobriety for the most part, other than that one time, the whole 5 years have been about healing myself, instead of sitting around waiting for somebody to rescue me, or, something to happen. That I've had to seek this healing out.
Trissa, what did you do? Why is this one working this year? Because you obviously had attempts at for 1 year before. And again, maybe you did throttle back on what you expected, but why do you see this one as being so successful?
I really honestly try to operate without having any expectations in general, really, honestly. But I would have to say the thing that really I think I did right was when I made this commitment. I said, I'm going to work this sobriety thing like it's my job. And I quit, I'm going to take some of this and leave some of that. And that I just was like, hey, somebody said, come to this meeting. I'm going to go to that meeting. Someone else said, do this. You said, come on the show. You had me on the show at 9 days. I'm going to do it. It's my job, right? It's my job. And I think as long as I continue to stay plugged in with people, and I mean, I can't ever imagine leaving you guys and saying, I got this, bye.
Yeah.
Because you're my world now. You guys, all of you're just so much part of my life, and so much a part of my heart. I mean, I wouldn't trade this for anything that I had before, before you guys.
Megan or Kate, the failure to meet expectations. Again, I'm the new guy that's sober, new person that's sober, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. Where's the danger in, we should set our goals high, but am I setting my goals too high? Because now I'm setting up, I think Megan, you said this, expectations, all my high goals just give me a much better chance of not reaching them and quitting because I fail. Or at least I feel I fail.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard, and I had never heard it before coming into the rooms, was that expectations were future resentments. And I was like, wow, that's very powerful, because, you go on a diet and you jump off and you expect you're going to lose 10 pounds in 10 days, and you don't do it. And you don't feel good about yourself. It's the same thing when you had many attempts at trying to quit drinking and you didn't do it. You don't feel good about yourself. And, if you don't follow through on something that you thought you should have because you put a bar to it or a goal, I just think I can't live like that anymore. It's not like I don't meet what I have to do, but I know what I can handle. And if I put too much pressure on myself, then that all starts to build up into some sort of a resentment. So use yourself, Jeff said at one point, the goal thing was overwhelming.
Well, all three of you, I mean, this is why I love having you on, because you all offer such great advice. And I know all three of you actually do work with other people and help others. But do you, when you get someone new that's chomping at the bit, temper them down that first year? And when do you do it like Teresa, who's at year one now, say, okay, now I'm going to let you go? I mean, how do we control that to avoid that expectation? Burnout? Or
we don't control other people. We let them control themselves and let them be on their own journey. I mean, my only job is I just love people, because that's what worked for me, with people just loving me.
And recovery is the rest of my life, or our lives. Yeah.
And I only compare myself with who I was yesterday. I don't say, I don't look at someone else and go, oh, well, we're both at a year. Why aren't I, doing all the things that they are doing? As long as I'm continuing to get better than I was yesterday, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we slide down. I mean, we can't keep getting better every day. Life gets lifey, as Megan says.
Scoot a little closer, Kate. Scoot a little closer to your mic.
I'm saying that that sometimes, like in the 4 agreements, we do our best, and our best changes, and it's different. So in terms of like, I'm not going to have the expectation of myself to respond to things the same way and perfectly every time. I'm going to do my best. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of this is really being compassionate to ourselves and responding to, my experience, responding when I remember to those difficulties and the challenges with compassion. Kristen Neff's model is to be aware of it, to recognize that there's a community, that what you're feeling, everybody has felt before, or many people feel that. And then words of kindness for yourself. Really, really important, especially when you're every day, actually. Doesn't even mean there's no application except every application, really, when we can remember it. And I really think that reaching out to people, especially during this pandemic where we can feel closed in, AA, the 12th step is carrying the message. And I think that just reaching out to someone when you're feeling down, or chairing a meeting, or doing any kind of service work is really important in terms of furthering the gift of sobriety. We can't keep it, we have to give it away.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I would say I had very critical people and very dysfunctional family life. And I used to have this really critical, negative voice that would say terrible things to me. That was stupid, Teresa. Why would you do that? And, just beating myself up. And through this work, now it's more like, and not to say I don't ever get exasperated or, but now it's more like, that was curious. Wonder why I reacted that way. it's more like that instead of the hammer. It's more like, I don't know, molding clay rather than hammering a nail, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think curiosity is a really great way to put it too, Teresa. Like being curious about ourselves and how things happen and why and what can we do next. And gee, that's interesting. I responded that way. Or, what would be helpful for me in this moment right now to do? Yeah.
And I think being honest with other people too, saying, gosh, I don't know where that reaction came from. That was weird. Let me back up a second, figure this out for a minute. I mean, yeah, I think just being willing to show up as ourselves is so healing. Just so healing.
Mhm.
Teresa, what?
Did you say authentic, Teresa? Getting to your authentic self? Didn't you say that? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like you really learn about yourself too. And with honesty, it's like that has really been shown to me during this pandemic with all this much more quiet time, and I'm not working outside the home anymore. All this quiet time, like you really get to see how you think and you work, and maybe too much, but that's the premise of life right now. But I feel like I get quicker answers and more insights more quickly now than I ever did before. And that only helps in terms of like, you can't know where, if you don't know where you are, you can't get to where you want to get. If you think you're in Boston and you're really in Philadelphia and you're trying to get to Sacramento, then you're not going to get there unless you're really clear about where you are right now.
Come a little closer again, Kate. You still get a little.
Yeah, I think this laptop is dying.
Hey, Teresa, what? Before I hit you all up with the negatives, what were the positive surprises you didn't expect but received this first year?
Energy, extra energy.
Well, that's a boring one. I wanted something really good or juicy or dirty,
It's
That's
not.
juicy.
I was like, oh, you want to hear like better orgasms?
No,
or something like
I
that?
wouldn't. No, I guess I was looking for more internal realizations about yourself, but let's just start with the energy going on.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, that was actually a shock to me after so long. All of a sudden I was like, wow, I got a lot done today. And then I still have energy to do something more. And it was like, maybe part of why I drank was to try to lower my energy level on purpose. But instead of fighting it, I've just kind of rolled with it. I mean, I'm not out running 20 miles a day or anything like that, but I find that I have a lot more energy to give to people now. And yeah.
It's interesting because the not having the energy, drinking made it easier for me to accept the things I wasn't doing. So I had a reason. If I had had energy, it would have bothered me more to not be achieving in life. So drinking almost gave me a reason, an excuse to fail. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was, maybe that was where my comfort zone was. I was, not that I was a failure, but it was easier to fail than to risk rolling the dice and if I got in a position where it's me that's causing the failure, maybe it's easier to just drink so I can blame the alcohol on why I was failing. I don't know.
Maybe like
You
only purpose was thinking about having a drink, and so there wasn't even any reality of anything because it was just like, well, I'm not going to do the emotions. When I get home, I'm going to have some wine, and if it's a bad day, it's more. It's sort of like avoiding things. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't even know that I was not living at my potential.
It's just, for me, it's easier to blame the alcohol than to blame the guy in the mirror. Teresa, what were you saying?
Well, You had the perfect analogy when we talked the other day, like the dogs that have been kept in cages for most of their lives. The first time they take them to a park with grass, the dogs don't just run out of the crate and just go crazy, right? It takes them a while. And I feel like I put a cage around myself with alcohol and drugs. And yeah, to feel good and feel happy and content was strange at
Well, it was
first
scary.
and scary.
The cage, which was a crappy place to live, as far as my drinking, it was a safe zone versus
Right.
going out and having, entering a world where I could be successful. I don't know. It was just kind of, if I can survive in this cage, maybe that's not the ideal dream for me, but I know the pain. I can deal with the pain, and there's nothing else to fear out of it. Megan, what, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think when you feel good.
I was going to say something about the orgasms, but I'm going to skip over it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think if we're on the perk part of it, I'm really happy. I've always been kind of a happy person, but that light went out. That was very dim for a long time. And when I entertained the idea of stopping, and we've all experienced this, I'm sure, like for the rest of my life, we'll never be happy again. And it's just so easy to feel so much better without that weight. And that's something I feel every day. And no shadows behind my shoulders walking down the street that used to haunt me. So yeah, I think that's
well, it's the my thing was it scared me to death to face life without alcohol.
right.
That was yeah, it caused me a lot of bad things, but it also worked to get me through some pretty scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So was it worth it? Well, it got to the point where it obviously wasn't worth it, but was it worth it as a survival tool? Because I was scared to death to face life without it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're a shining example of it now.
So Megan, let me start with you and then we'll run around. But and Teresa, this is coming to you. Negatives from sobriety. And I hate to say that because there's people that are newer, but for me, having to face some of this stuff, now I look back and it's the blessings. But at first, facing stuff without alcohol was like, that's tough. The second with free was having to face some of the emotions without being able to bury them, numb them, run from them. I had to face. Now the reward of doing that is huge, but that was, there were some. So did you have, just starting with you, Megan, negatives initially from sobriety? Were there any for you?
I think the fear of someone who's not been that disciplined their whole life, that I was going to have to be disciplined, and the fear of maybe failing at that. The negatives for me are, I can go out and be around a crowd of people who are drinking, and I get a little turned off when it gets a little out of control, and that never would have bothered me before, but maybe because I was one of them. I'm a little disappointed in certain people that I wasn't necessarily disappointed in before. I think, when I see certain behaviors, I guess I'm more cognizant to behaviors, and I'm not a judgmental person, but I just I see things I hadn't seen before, and know what my boundaries are. Some of it's a little toxic, and I just, I don't need that in my life anymore. And if that means that you've got to remove certain people from your orb, then so be it. But I'm being a little selfish here, and I got to take care of me so I can be the best me. I don't know if that wasn't maybe the right answer, or I don't know, there's right or wrong answers, but as far as negatives go.
Kate, did you you're muted, but did you lose any I had some drinking buddies that I thought were good friends that I lost. And at first I thought I lost friends, but now looking back, I lost drinking buddies. And those are two different things. Did you have any negatives, or were any, I don't want to say regrets because that paints a negative picture.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, as long as you're
Okay.
a little closer like that, we're fine.
Okay. My best friend whose wedding was my last drink that night, I lost that friendship. I chose not to continue because her continual talking about drinking and was triggering to me, and it was threatening my sobriety. And also when I went over, went to their house, and they were drinking the red wine in the goblet, triggering, and I could smell it, and I was like, I said to this friend, I'm really having a hard time, and because of her issue of wanting and liking drinking alcohol, she continued to drink the alcohol, which was really hard. And when I did tell her I was going to AA before her wedding, she said that it would be a shame if I couldn't drink at the wedding. So maybe that wasn't such a loss of a friendship, but it was threatening my sobriety to continue to hear somebody who wasn't telling the truth, and it wasn't my business to say, look at, I think that I think you have an issue here. It wasn't my place, and I can't stay around things that don't feel honest, or I can't tell my truth. So I mean, and say, the good thing about not drinking is that you feel your feelings, and the hard thing about not drinking is you feel your feelings, and you have to face some trauma sometimes. You have to face some very deep pain, and that takes courage, and that is actually painful too. So you have to be aware of that. You have to be up for that. You have to know that it's going to take some work. And like Megan was saying, if you weren't a self-disciplined person, you may think that you don't have what it takes, but you do.
Mm-hmm.
You do.
I think that was my thing, is that because I didn't fix everything in year 1 or 6 months, am I doing this right? But looking back, like Charissa said, this is just not drinking is what I should have focused on more. Well, I guess I did. I had good direction from everyone. But so Charissa, what about you? With your first year, are there any negatives that came with it?
Yeah, I mean, I have panic disorder, so it kind of sucks to not have that ability to just check out with with the alcohol, and to stop the heart palpitations and all that other stuff. But it's also, pouring alcohol on your anxiety is like pouring gasoline on a fire. So it actually made it worse in the long run. And I understand that now, but and then, yeah, I mean, I get kind of like Megan was saying, I have lower tolerance for bullshit now. Like when people are getting hammered and start repeating themselves, it's more sad, honestly, to me, because I can see like the person underneath all of that. And it seems like when people get really drunk, they all turn into the same person.
I love that.
Yeah, they just repeat themselves, and they dredge up old things, and they like get stuck on an old tape, and it's and I actually, another interesting thing that has just started happening, if I spend more than a day or two around somebody who's drinking or using, I actually get physically ill now. Like my body wants to throw up. Like I get physically ill just being around somebody who's drinking heavy for a few days. It takes a few days, because then I had this happen over Christmas when I was around my aunt, who just has always drank from forever. And on my way home, I actually thought I was going to have to pull over and throw up.
That's your body. That's.
And one thing I always remind myself.
Come closer, Katie. Your mic is killing.
When I look at people and I go, oh, look at you, I go, oh, look at me. Look at me before. Like, I never let myself go down to the judging. I don't know if it's me or if it's the divine that's saying, oh, it wasn't you too long ago. Like, you are not. And their behavior and me taking their inventory is none of my business. None. I can notice it. I can say, geez, this doesn't serve me. Not really having fun. I think I'll leave. But, and I do feel like with gatherings that I do have to go to, like weddings, if there's drinking, I just feel like I'm a badass for not drinking.
I'm starting to feel that pride.
You are.
Versus the shame, at first of like, oh God, everyone's like, now it's like, no, I'm thrilled to be this way.
You get to be yourself all the time. You get to be you all the time. Yeah. I would say another thing that's kind of hard, and it has to do with working with people, is whenever I'm working with someone who still continues to get stuck, that in the drinking, right? Like they'll get a little bit of time and then they go back, and then it's heart-wrenching. Honestly, but having to just step back and just say, you know what, I'm here, whenever you're ready, and just let them fall down as many times as they have to fall down until, they don't fall down anymore.
Yeah.
Megan, did people maybe see you as a different Megan after? Did they have to relearn who you were, maybe? Because I think I've changed. I think I'm different than I was. I think I'm presenting a different Jeff than I did prior to sobriety.
I think
you're different than you were a year ago when I first met you.
It's the highlights.
It must be the highlights. But yeah, you are. You're so much more calm and much more present and much more grounded than you were a year ago.
You don't interrupt nearly as much.
Okay, it was my first show,
true.
and I was nervous. Okay,
but I'm not judgmental. Remember?
Oh no, you just bring it up every week.
No, my sister was just visiting for a month, and she's not a drinker, and she said to me one night, she goes, "You're just such a much better version of the good version that I always, knew you to be." And yeah, it was really sweet. And I actually was having lunch with someone yesterday at my office, and I shared with her that I was in AA, and I was just telling some stories. I was telling a story about, how when I gave my first lead, and I said, I'm not really shy about like public speaking. She goes, I would have never guessed. And she doesn't really know me very well. And she had me pegged. So I think it's, without trying to pat myself too much on the back, like you said, you're proud of yourself when you don't, like Kate just said, when she goes to a wedding, she's proud of herself. And I'm proud of myself. So
it's the success when I was drinking, like public speaking, which I still struggle with. But just doing this, getting on this show or whatever you want to call it. And Megan, you saw the first time I was so nervous I cut you off after every 3 words. And I had been apologizing for a year straight. But if I had had success while drinking, it wouldn't have mattered. I wouldn't have grown from it. But to do it sober is where that allowed me to believe I did it, maybe, to actually, I guess, believe that I was getting better, whereas before I didn't believe any of it because it was just the alcohol. Anything I did that was done because of the confidence that alcohol gave me, I never got any better at it because I didn't do it. The alcohol did it. So now that I'm starting to do these things sober, I'm starting to say, hey, Jeff actually did that.
Yeah. Who is that guy?
Yeah, I don't know. So
I'll just tell you a quick little story about when I did give my first lead.
Oh.
I was watching some things online about public speaking, and it ended up they wanted me to buy into a program. All I was looking was for some tips, right? And the tip was like, if you don't have them in the first 15 seconds, you don't have them. And nowadays, people bring phones into meetings. I just had this vision of everybody looking down at their phone, and that was like going to be throwing me off my game. So here was my opening statement. I said, well, I'm glad to be here, introduce myself. I enjoy enjoy public speaking. And prior to this meeting, every time I publicly spoke, I drank beforehand. And they all looked at me like, "Whoa, you really need to be here." But I had their attention. So I was doing it sober, and the words just then kind of flowed out. But it was a way for me to grab them all.
Well, I think, for all of us, I think I see that success breeds success. And Teresa, your smile tonight sums this whole thing up after a year. I'm betting,
by the way,
it's a different look on your face than there was a year ago at this time. And that's
a year ago. Yeah, a year ago at this time. Every time I would get some time sober and go back, it would just get worse and worse and worse every time. And it got to the point where I didn't know what was going to happen from my night to the next.
Had you given up on your
myself was more.
Had you given up on your belief that you could even do it?
I had totally given up on my belief that I could do it, and I was just trying to anesthetize myself until I just died, frankly. And I had been showing up at TLC meetings and sharing, and someone noticed I was missing for a week. And they reached out to me.
Kate?
And that was what I needed to come out of my stupor. It wasn't Kate, but Kate, it was Ketsia, actually.
Is that when you had your blip? Are you talking about? You learned when you had that one day?
No, before no, I'm talking about last December 2020, January 2021. I had a whole week where I was just binging, and I just decided, I can't do this, because I think I'd had like 45 days or something, and I relapsed, and 4, 5, 6 days, however many days. Yeah, and then Ketsia noticed I was gone, and she sent me a text.
The belief thing, and that's why it's so important for these kind of groups, because the three of you, and I'm using that as more of a general term, but in these groups, you gave me the belief that I didn't have myself. So you carried me until I started to actually believe in myself. I didn't.
Same.
It was, well, these three are saying I can do this. I don't think they're right, but I'll trust them because nothing else is working, and I'll try to believe them. And it was enough until I got the success. I started to believe in myself. So.
Same. Kate just calmly told me, just don't drink and you're gonna be okay. Just don't drink and you're gonna be okay. And I was like, well, you're okay, so maybe I can be okay too.
Kate is the voice of you're gonna be okay. She's the queen of that, of just making, you know what?
You're going to be okay.
Totally.
You're going to be okay. So, well, look, I'm going to.
And I'm better than okay now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's 4 smiles on the screen. So
Mhm.
not bad work. All right. Well, look, thank you all. And Teresa, congrats.
Congratulations.
Congrats to all of us and everyone on here. I know this was just great stuff, and we'll keep digging. Appreciate y'all being on.
All right.
So
Thanks.
hang on.
Thank you so
and,
much, Jeff.
Everyone, we'll see you again Thursday evening at the same time. So thanks for being here. Take care, everyone. Bye.